Good afternoon. I'm Jim Karadimos, President of the Worcester County Horticultural Society, at least for the next hour, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all. I thank you for joining us this afternoon. I would like to call to order the 180th annual meeting of the Worcester County Horticultural Society. It is also my pleasure to introduce Mr. Rick Leaf, our secretary, for at least the next hour. Rick?
Thank you, Jim. We had 85 members submit their votes during registration, and this fulfills the quorum of 60 members to allow us to hold a meeting today. I now make a motion to waive the reading of the 179th annual meeting minutes.
I second that motion.
Of the submitted proxy votes to waive the reading of the 179th annual meeting minutes, there were 70 votes in favor, 0 opposed, 10 abstentions, and so the motion carries.
Thank you, Rick. Declare the vote as passing by waiving the reading of the 179th annual meeting minutes.
I now make a motion to approve the minutes of the 179th annual meeting.
I second that motion.
Of the submitted proxy votes to approve the minutes of the 179th annual meeting, there were 71 in favor, 0 opposed, 14 abstentions, and so the motion carries.
The vote passes to approve the minutes of the 179th annual meeting. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to our treasurer, Mike Mcdonough. Mike?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Mcdonough. I'm the treasurer for Tower Hill. To set the stage for what I'm about to talk about over the next 5 minutes or so, I'll start by stating the obvious. Last year was a very difficult year for Tower Hill on many levels, but we got through it surprisingly well, and I'm happy to report that the future looks bright. Before we dive into the details of last year's results, it's very important to me personally that I use this forum just to recognize and express my sincere appreciation to the amazing staff here at Tower Hill. They worked tirelessly with the board, the various subcommittees, all throughout the year to make quick, strategic, and sometimes courageous decisions in the face of great uncertainty. As the treasurer, I personally had more than 40 interactions with our CEO, Grace, our CFO, Jane, and the whole finance team between mid-March and late April. It was about a 5-week stretch of time that saw the garden close its doors, the endowment drop by about 25%, the construction project get postponed, December Nightlights event canceled, and the fiscal 21 budget that we just approved 2 months earlier completely scrapped and reforecasted. Simply put, we entered fiscal year 2021 focused entirely on organizational survival. Thankfully, with the exceptional leadership from Grace and tireless effort from Jane and the whole team, and a lot of help from our great trustees, and even our banking relationship through Webster 5, Tower Hill was able to make the necessary moves to get through fiscal year 21 with a surprisingly good financial result. So as we look at slide 1, if we strip out the revenue that came directly from COVID relief programs, which were very critical throughout the year, Tower Hill would have spent more than it made last year. Operating revenue would have come in at about $3,822,000, which was about $200,000 less than it cost to run the organization last year, with the operating expenses for the garden totaling about $4,037,000. Please note, this is not the actual financial result for the garden during FY21, but we felt it important to highlight that even with our best effort and relatively good results from earned income with all the challenges we were facing, certainly much better than we initially expected back in May and June of 2020. Without the much needed COVID relief support that the garden received throughout the year, we'd have experienced a loss of about $200,000. Which would have represented a drop in operating revenue of about 25% from the prior year. Thankfully, this is not the whole story. If we refer to slide 2, you can see that the garden's 2021 fiscal year snapshot, thanks to a little more than about $1 million received in COVID relief support throughout the year, Tower Hill's operating revenue was $4,880,000, resulting in a net income of about $830,000 for the fiscal year. A very positive result in an otherwise mostly negative year. Just to take a minute, it's important to point out that within these operating revenue figures, you can really see the true challenge that the garden faced last year. Admissions revenue, garden shop sales, and private event revenue were all down considerably from the prior year numbers, in some cases by more than 50%. And even though in all these cases, the end of the year results were actually better than our reforecasted budget had expected, it was still a big drop from the year before. But as most of you are probably aware, last year's drop in operating revenue was not due to a lack of interest in the garden. It was because we had to limit the capacity in order to keep our staff and our visitors safe. Also, an extremely important bright spot to highlight about the results in this was the tremendous support that the garden received from you, our members and visitors and donors all over. Early into the pandemic, our advancement department did an amazing job to launch the Garden Resiliency Fund, which we'll talk about later. It exceeded all expectations for our fundraising goals and certainly helped to offset the large drop in earned revenue. In a normal year, about 20% of our annual operating revenue comes from gifts and grants, but last year, various giving efforts made up more than 30% of the garden's income for fiscal year 21. A wonderful example highlighting the generosity of our patrons. Finally, if we look at slide 4, with regards to the balance sheet of the organization and specifically the investment portfolio, if we go one further, it was a real-time reminder of the roller coaster ride that we were on throughout the year. As referenced earlier in my comments, the endowment dropped by roughly 25% just in the first few days of the fiscal year. And thanks to some heroic efforts by the Federal Reserve to stabilize capital markets around the world, Tower Hill's largest asset increased by 48% last year to end the fiscal year at an all-time high level of $25,734,000. In summary, last year was the most significant financial challenge that Tower Hill has faced in modern memory. And I'm very pleased to be here today to share with you that these relatively good financial results, and to reiterate, the organization is on a strong financial position moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I will present my report. I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which Tower Hill lives, the Nipmuc. I acknowledge their living culture and affirm my respect for the elders, ancestors, and descendants for whom this garden represents the ancestral and living connection to Earth. As you just heard, this indeed was a challenging year for Tower Hill, as it was for all of us. Yet, with a clear vision and strategic plan, we continue to open up new opportunities whose impact will continue to be felt well far into our future. It has been a great honor and privilege to steward Tower Hill, helping this outstanding team achieve its inspirational and ambitious plans. Despite the challenges presented, we celebrate an extremely successful year. Together, we have a lot to be proud of. Tower Hill is a beacon of hope for our future and well-being. As we're living in unprecedented times, Tower Hill is truly more important than ever. The successes of this past year reaffirm my trust in and appreciation for the garden. As soon as COVID-19 was upon us, our trustees and management stepped up to lead through challenges previously unknown to any of us. Everything that I thought would be stressful last year seems so trifling now. The triumphs I dreamt pale in comparison to the fulfillment of the human potential that I witness now every day. We focused on two of the most valuable assets of Tower Hill: our living connection, our living collection, and our people. We knew that now we needed each other more than ever before. From the beginning, this board was adamant: develop a plan to minimize furloughs, no layoffs, no pay cuts. And so we did. We sought and received a PPP loan, as you heard. We cut expenses and looked for opportunities to save funds. Most importantly, you were there for us. Donors stepped up to increase their support of the garden at this very critical time. With your support, our mission continued to advance. This year has made abundantly clear how much your support means to the success of the garden mission. With you, we have been able to open Tower Hill again. Of course, you know the restorative power of nature and the peace and joy that can be found in the garden's familiar paths we travel. As you will hear today, we have made many advancements together this year. Our digital assets have grown, allowing our friends to be part of the garden from their homes wherever they are in the world. Construction began on important new projects: the park and garden, the orchard, the inner park, the alley. Oh yes, of course, the Ramble. All altering our garden and providing a beautiful and fitting legacy for years to come. I'm amazed that more than any generation before them, today's youth are truly threatened by the prospect of a dystopian future foretold by predictions of the increasingly catastrophic effects of climate change they are likely to see during adulthood. I truly hope that the Ramble will spark discussion about the worries and concerns they share and the future they dream of. So, Tower Hill is an institution profoundly connected with the natural world. And every day we learn lessons of resilience and adaptation in the garden. Our founders and every ensuing trustee and donor have kept faith in our mission and potential during good and bad times. The staff consistently demonstrate fidelity to the vision and to each other, raising the bar and expanding the impact. And those amazing volunteers who donate countless of hours to serve in numerous capacities with a single goal of delighting the public. They, along with the staff, are truly the heartbeat of Tower Hill. They are led by an incredible leader, Grace Elton, who inspires, encourages, and enables all to do their best work. I am most grateful for her critical role in the success of Tower Hill. And Grace, what can I say? It's been a pleasure. And thank you to our team, our board, our volunteers and members. Thank you for always caring, embracing what many thought was a crazy adventure we launched 5 years ago to go bold, being a positive force, staying scrappy, and keeping it real. We continue to connect people to plants and to each other. And so, what an amazing 5 years it has been. Thank you that, for me, next to my family and caring for my patients, this has truly been a passion. The deep gratitude I feel today is manifested in a kaleidoscope of memories, emotions, happiness, pride, humility, respect, responsibility, admiration for those who have come before me, and for all those to follow. There's an infinite mixture of many overlapping feelings that I'm experiencing, but the strongest is truly one of gratitude. Being at Tower Hill brings to the surface other feelings that were awakened while I began my tenure here. When I first experienced the garden and its culture over 30 years ago, with this exquisite perfection and love of nature, that has accompanied me since then, to this day. For me personally, horticulture and gardening is the art of materializing dreams throughout a very long journey. And on this journey, I've been supported by so many in so many ways. Please indulge me and allow me to recite a few words of a Buddhist poet, and I quote, "If you were a poet, you will see clearly that there's a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. Without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If we look into this sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. If the sunshine is not there, the forest cannot grow. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we see the wheat. We know the logger cannot exist without his daily bread, and therefore the wheat that became his bread is also in the sheet of paper. And the logger's father and mother are in it too. When we look in this way, we see that without all these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. Suppose we try to return one of the elements to its source. Suppose we return the sunshine to the sun, or we return the logger to his mother. Then we have no sheet of paper either. The fact is that this sheet of paper is made up only of non-paper elements. Without non-paper elements like wind, logger, sunshine, there will be no paper. As thin as this sheet of paper is, it contains everything in the universe in it. I must admit that it may not be easy, but our commitment is that Tower Hill must always awaken emotion in the people who experience this wonderful space we have created, to become conscious of their experience, to connect with each other, and to comprehend the true nature of nature, to transcend the established and to arrive at new and expected results while realizing that nature always beckons us to be on her side. And I don't want to continue to dream, to wake up again and again and live this and other magical realities. With gratitude for allowing me to head along this wonderful journey with all of you, I thank you. Dix and Diane will be leading us through the Development Committee report.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to present the development results from the last fiscal year. Before I do so, I just want to say thank you, Jim, for all those images you just described. If we can move to my first slide. The first slide of the development report describes the major activity of the advancement team this year. That is the Garden Resiliency Fund. As we look at the big picture, this was one of the most significant fundraising projects for operations in all of the history of the Worcester County Horticultural Society. The total raised from both foundations and individuals was just short of $1.2 million. It was comprised of well over 1,000 gifts, whose median size was $50. So you can see that we enjoyed very broad-based generosity. Next slide, please. We all know that membership is driven largely by visitation at Tower Hill. And so the fiscal 21 total household membership count was down by 1,000. However, we've had a wonderfully strong recovery since April 1st, and we are now close to the fiscal year 20 goal of 8,500 member households. Next slide, please. In the last fiscal year, our capital projects construction paused, as Mike Mcdonough mentioned, but our fundraising did not. And as of today, we've raised 97% of our construction goal and 70% of our overall campaign goal due to the generosity of over 150 donors. Just in last February, the Manton Foundation made us a wonderful grant of $500,000 to our capital projects, and they challenged our community to contribute another $500,000, which the foundation will match when we have done so. And I'm happy to say that to date, we raised 46% of this generous match. Last slide, please. The staff, as well as volunteers from both the board and the membership, have reinvigorated Tower Hill's Perennial Society. And this society recognizes those generous people who have included Tower Hill in their estate plans. Thanks to all of you for your wonderful support. As you can tell, it made a huge difference this year. Jim, back to you.
Thank you for the good news, Dix. It's my pleasure to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Grace Elton. Grace, you kind of give a report.
Thank you, Jim. Oh, it's so wonderful to be here virtually with all of you. I wish we were here in person. My name is Grace Elton, and I have the honor of serving as the garden's Chief Executive Officer. I've actually been away from the garden for the last 3 months because we welcomed our first child, Estelle Sweet Elton. So we've been having a lot of fun getting to know her, and we brought her up to the garden a couple times. There will be many, many more visits for that little girl up to the garden to come. I left the garden in the very capable hands of Jane Ellis, our Chief Financial and Operating Officer. And I wanted to thank Jane for all the work that she's done over the last 3 months to keep the garden moving and thriving. You know, you heard it with the Garden Resiliency Fund. We use this word a lot, resilience. It's a word that I never thought I would say so much over until the last year happened. But really the definition of the word resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And although we did that this year, this is a word that actually in the botanical world we've been thinking about and talking about a lot. It's been a popular replacement for the word sustainable in certain cases. And over the past few years, we've really embraced this word resilience and resiliency, the idea of resiliency and overcoming these difficulties as we think about the effects of climate change on our gardens, on our plant collections, and on our world. And as we developed our new strategic plan that was revealed to you at the last year's annual meeting, we built these concepts of sustainability and resilience into each tactic and goal of the plan. And I'm really proud that we had a strong focus on that. So when COVID reared its awful head at us, we realized that we'd already been practicing resiliency in our horticulture practices, and we just needed to spread that to the rest of the garden. Our annual report was available in a link to you for the invitation for this meeting. So please make sure you check that out. There's some really great stories from each of our department heads on how their departments were resilient. And you'll see that in that report, in the beginning of the year, we were planning for growth in all of our mission and our operational functions. And as we realized that these wouldn't be able to go on as planned, we needed to be truly resilient to make sure that the garden would survive. So we had to learn a new word, pivot. I believe that was one of Jane's words as well. And she uses it quite a lot because she's quite the ballerina with her pivoting financially. So each department was taught to pivot. We assessed our ability to deliver or support the mission. I'm really still amazed at the way that all the staff stepped up to the challenge. They pivoted, they took our functions in new directions and enabled our garden to thrive through much adversity this year. Our finance team, as Mike Mcdonough, our treasurer, mentioned, worked tirelessly to reforecast the budget. So we had a realistic picture of what we could accomplish with these new challenges, as well as some new resources last year. They secured the paycheck protection loans and other financing options that we could use if needed. And we presented a deficit budget to the Board of Trustees. They chose to support it in order to preserve the majority of our staff and protect them from the layoffs that have faced so many cultural institutions around the country. And as you heard in the treasurer's report, we ended the year much better than that deficit budget. In fact, having a surplus that we're very proud of. Next slide, please. We had a lot of fun trying to pivot and learn how to deliver our mission in new ways. This slide is an example of some of the education programs that we did. Our innovative education team, of course, they are wonderful planners, and they said, okay, first of all, we need goals. So they set out 4 goals for the year, and it wasn't just survive. It was first, deliver our mission. Second, keep people safe. Third, enhance the visitor experience. And fourth, bring people joy when they need it most. So that's how they approached every part of their functions and how they really learned how they could pivot to deliver on all those four goals. So they created self-guided experiences that could be enjoyed while social distancing. Since we couldn't work with school groups because they weren't visiting, we really focused on the needs of families because many of those were working and learning from home, as many of our staff were as well. We offered outdoor workshops and online content for these family groups, and they really took advantage of them and appreciated. I'm just amazed at how especially our youth education manager, Marissa, in the bottom right corner, there's images of youth programs, youth art programs going on through Zoom. That's quite some talent to be able to deliver that mission through a computer and keep those youth engaged. We also took the opportunity to bring in speakers from other continents. Example, we had someone coming in from England to give a lecture to our youth or our adult education audience. We never would be able to engage those kind of speakers before. So even though COVID had some restraints on education, it really gave us some wonderful opportunities as well. On the next slide, you'll see that the horticulture team also took advantage of fewer visitors in the garden. For the 11 weeks that the garden was closed, we really could kind of tear the garden apart and make a mess and give a lot of the gardens a facelift. We gave a major facelift to collections in the conservatories, planting some of the collections in the ground where normally all of our plant collections were in pots. We did some major renovations to the systematic garden. We renovated a couple of our meadows. We did a lot of planting and changing some major pathways in the inner park. And these are just to name a few of the major things that the horticulture staff did. On the screen, these are two of our major projects that we also completed. The top photos are of Mark Richardson, our director of horticulture, replanting our meadow or our historic apple orchard. 2 years ago, we took scion wood cuttings of every tree in the 119 variety collection and grafted them onto fire blight resistant rootstock. This was in an effort to save our collection. Then we removed every tree. So if you've been to the garden over the last year or two, you've noticed that where the orchard stood, it was very bare. Now you'll see the small trees that have been grafted, and we're really excited to see that collection really come back into its prime. We also had a really successful year, our most successful year ever, actually, for our vegetable gardens. And in the bottom photos, you'll see that Don Davies, our horticulture manager, is working with staff and volunteers to produce over 1,100 pounds of produce from our vegetable garden. We were really excited to be acknowledged on a national platform and receive a grant. And then you can see Congressman Jim McGovern, who came to congratulate us on that. So we were really proud of all the work our horticulture team did. On the next slide, you've heard about the great success of our advancement department in both resiliency and the capital campaign from Dix Leeson. And it really was truly a team effort, as Dix described. The staff, the volunteers, the board all pitched in to help raise these funds. And it was through wonderful support from our members and donors that we were able to come out on top of this pandemic and also make great strides in the capital campaign. I want to especially thank Herb Tobin. Herb served as our interim director of institutional advancement while we were hunting for our new advancement officer. Herb led our team to develop the strategy and kick off the Resiliency Fund. And when he first presented the goals to me, I was a little nervous. They were very lofty goals, but I knew that they were what we needed to achieve to be able to keep the garden's doors open. And his team obviously met and surpassed those goals. So we're very, very proud of the work that he did and the foundation that he laid. Thank you, Herb. So after a national search, we were happy to welcome Andre Guerini as our new Chief Development Officer. There's a great mugshot of him on the screen here. And he came to us most recently from the Salvation Army. And Andre has fully embraced Tower Hill's mission, and he's brought many new ideas about expanding support for the gardens to our operations. He's working on building his team right now, and we're really, really excited to see where our advancement functions are going to go with his leadership. On the next slide. These are some of the other functions that every member of our team completed this year. So really every staff member was involved in our resilience, from delivering the mission to ensuring that the grounds were safe and clean for visitors, to welcoming guests at the front desk and at our gatehouse with a mask on. And there was always a smile under that mask, we knew, and offering unique items in our gift shop. We stood together and we not only survived, but we thrived. Visitors came back to the garden for many reasons. Many of them came for education, for inspiration. Some had Zoom fatigue. But really, the reason that I value the most is that we could tell that people just needed nature. They needed to find a place to heal from the collective stress that our community has gone through this year. I'm honored that Tower Hill was that place for so many people. Our mission that was restated with the work of our strategic plan just finished last June is to create experiences with plants that inspire people and improve the world. And our vision is a place where people and plants thrive. The mission and vision seem more relevant this year than ever before. And in many ways, the challenges of this year allowed us to deliver our mission more fully. I am still in awe of my talented staff, in the strong leadership of our board, and in the way that our community supported us as we supported them. As we were all working together to deliver this mission in a very uncertain time, we also were planning for the future. So we were really excited that this year we could break ground on our capital projects. We completed a renovation to the visitor center lobby, building an exterior vestibule, and we also installed a new universally accessible entry walk. And I've only been back to the garden twice during my maternity leave. Once was 2 weeks ago, and I was just amazed at the stunning planting display that our horticulture team has done on that entry walk. I'm really, really excited to see what they have in store for the rest of the garden construction. So currently right now, the construction is happening on our expanded parking lot, the Ramble, and other projects well underway. And now I will turn the presentation over to our Director of Horticulture, Mark Richardson, who's going to give you a really detailed update on the progress of this capital construction.
Thanks, Grace. It's really great to see you. I will say, I haven't seen you for a while, so it's really nice to see you and also hear your voice. And thank you for all those kind words. Yeah, one of the words that Grace mentioned was pivot. And last year we were really forced on the capital project front to pivot pretty drastically. We were going full bore last spring, ready to break ground with some pretty large scale construction projects, and really had to pump the brakes in light of the global pandemic. But thankfully, patience has paid off, and we're able to carry out all these projects this year. And so what I'd like to do is bring you up to speed on where we are with our construction projects, what we've completed to date, and a little bit on scheduling looking forward through the rest of this year. This is a rendering, excuse me, Diana, if you could go back to the last slide. This is a rendering of the Ramble, and all of the construction projects that are underway currently really relate back to the Ramble pretty heavily. The Ramble is the garden that I think I'm most excited about. It's the project that I think the organization is most excited about. It's our new family and youth garden, and we just can't wait for it to open. We can't wait to share it with you, and I can't wait to share some of the progress photos in this presentation. Now you can go to the next slide, Diana. So just as a reminder, these are all of the projects that are either currently underway or have been recently completed. The parking gardens, which I'll talk about in some detail, the Stoddard Education and Visitor Center connection and reception area renovation. That is the project that we were fortunate to be able to carry out last year. So given where we were with the pandemic, we wanted to be able to break ground on some elements of the construction. So we chose to renovate the reception area, the front and the front walkway up to the reception area. We call it the Upper Stoddard pathway. And so that work was completed last year. And we are, as Grace mentioned, finishing up the planting plan this season. And Dawn Davies, our horticulture manager, has been really just instrumental in putting that plan together and getting the planting done. And it looks beautiful. And I will share an image in this slideshow. We also were able 2 seasons ago now to carry out installation of a path past the vegetable garden that we call the Farmhouse Path. That's a connector between the garden within reach and the lawn garden. And that path was necessary because we are moving to scenario where every guest is welcomed in the visitor center. So they walk the upper Stoddard pathway into the visitor center. So access to the lawn garden from that pathway was closed with last year's construction. And so the Farmhouse Path gives an accessible route to that location. We are relocating the youth garden that was eaten up by the expansion of the parking lot. We're enhancing Pliny's Alley, and I'm excited to say that that project is very well underway. And then finally, the Ramble. With all of these construction projects, we are really committed to universal design principles. So Tower Hill has a lot of grade changes, has a lot of steps historically. And so we want to make sure that all of our projects going forward provide the same experience for guests of all ages and all abilities. And so with all of these projects, we've really committed ourselves and really tried to focus very heavily on universal design that provides a singular experience for all of our guests. And you can go to the next slide, Diana. So the parking garden, this is really a doubling of our parking lot. So everything that you see here in the white color is our existing parking, and all of the gray parking areas are expanded parking. So the road that leads up to our maintenance barn, the horticulture barn, is being paved, and some parking is being installed along that road. We're expanding to the north, which is to the left of the screen as you're viewing it, with a section of parking we're calling the meadow lot, and then expanding to the south and to the west as well. So this doubles our capacity, allows us to be able to continue to operate the garden without having to close the gate as often as we used to, and hopefully never. And really, with opening and expanding the footprint of the garden, it was really necessary for us to do this work, to provide a beautiful experience in the parking lot, but also to provide more parking so that we could welcome the tens of thousands of guests that visit us every single year. This work is very well underway. If you were to visit Tower Hill Botanic Garden today, you would see most of these parking areas pretty well rough graded out. The new parking lots to the south, the west, and the horticulture barn lot, those will all be essentially finished by the end of July. A binder course will be put down. The existing parking areas will all be deep remilled and resurfaced, so that everything is a seamless parking asphalt surface. And that work will all be done by September 26th. And then the finished paving of all the surfaces, both new and old alike, will be finished up by October 3rd. So by autumn illuminated and by night lights this season, all of our parking areas should be pretty well wrapped up. And you can go to the next slide, Diana. So as I mentioned before, the upper Stoddard connection, that new pathway was installed last year. You can see it here in the screen just to the west of the farmhouse, or to the left of the farmhouse, and the Farmhouse Path to the east of the farmhouse is the one that connects you to the lawn garden. So that work was all completed last season, and you can skip to the next slide. The gate that prevents people from going immediately into the garden within reach without first going into the Stoddard Center will be done later on this fall. That's not there yet. And at that point, every single guest will go through the garden, through the lobby, through the Stoddard Center to gain access to the garden. Next slide. And here's some images of the construction from last season. So on the left, you can see the new lobby vestibule being built. On the bottom left, or on the upper, I should say, on the bottom left, you can see our Secretary Rick Leaf standing with Grace, admiring the view, and you can see the image that they're looking at of Wachusett Mountain in the distance. So the new pathway really frames that view very, very well. Next slide. And this is that image that I mentioned before of the new planting plan that's still underway, but almost completely finished. You can go to the next slide. So the remaining aspects of the park and gardens are under construction now. This is the entry pavilion area. The new stone wall that you see in this image is completed. The blue stone on underneath the gazebo has been reset on concrete to make sure that it doesn't shift and move around and make it more accessible. The concrete walkway will be finished up by the end of August, and planting will also be finished up by the middle of August. Next slide. And here's some construction photos. So the stone wall that you see in the top left incorporated a lot of existing stone that was in an existing stone wall around the entry pavilion. So fortunately, they were able to use a lot of that existing stone, which is great. It looks like it's always been there. And then I love what they did with the blue stone in the pavilion. They took every single piece out, marked it, laid it out exactly as it was laid out before, poured a new concrete floor, and then installed the blue stone just exactly as it was in the pavilion before all this construction happened. But luckily, going forward, this stone will not buckle like it has in the past, and will provide a really seamless experience for all guests. Next slide. Pliny's LA is very much underway. So with Pliny's, we're trying to provide an accessible pathway to the Ramble, which is at the far end of Pliny's. The boardwalk will be completed later on this month. So June 28th is when this is set to be completed. The Pliny's fountain is being redone as well, and that work will be done by the end of July. And then the planting, there is some additional planting that will take place around Pliny's, will be done in early September. You can go to the next slide. One thing about Pliny's, to make this as an accessible route as possible, was we went back and forth on a lot of different options. This had historically been a mowed pathway about 8 feet wide. And for various reasons, grass under trees doesn't work very well for accessibility, but also for just for aesthetics and for durability of the turf. So we decided we needed a hard surface. Bluestone was proposed. We realized that digging a foundation for bluestone to do it appropriately would really have had a tremendous impact on the tree's root systems. So we decided to use a pretty innovative footing system called diamond piers. You can see them in this section, this cutaway. They're concrete blocks with steel rods driven through them. This is a much lower impact on the tree's root systems. So hopefully the trees on Pliny's will be, they'll suffer a bit, but not much from the impact of construction because of how it was constructed. And also the boardwalk decking is black locust, which is a sustainably sourced, harvested material, which we're pretty excited about using. Next slide. And then finally, the Ramble. So the Ramble is heavily into construction. The outcrop in the top of the image is just about complete. The pond will be completed by the end of June. The stone stacking area and a lot of the other smaller features will be completed later this summer, June 24th. For stone stacking, the brush pile will be finished up by July 23rd. The pavilion, which you can see in the image here, will be done by July 9th. And then the restroom facility, which will include two new restrooms, will be finished up in early November. And you can go to the next slide. And this is my, with two more slides. We held a virtual groundbreaking in April where you can see that the outcrop was very much underway. We were very excited to be able to all get in there and use our golden shovels and celebrate the opening of construction of the Ramble. And you can head to the next slide. And then some construction images. Lots of stone. Obviously, planting is the last thing that happens, but this garden features a lot of stone, and a lot of stone that kids will really enjoy climbing all over. You can see we had a little guest at the virtual groundbreaking, just really enjoying climbing up the not quite finished stone outcrop. And the stone stacking table is in the top image on the right. That was installed earlier this week. The stone archway welcomes you into that area. And then you can see a picture of the stone waterfall that is in the pond in that central feature. So that's our construction update. We're just thrilled for this work to all be happening. Couldn't have done it without the support of many of those of you who are on the call this afternoon, and just really looking forward to all this work wrapping up later on this year. Thank you.
And thank you, Mark, and thank you to your talented core team. As I've always said consistently, people love Tower Hill because of the work you and your team do. So kudos to everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our governance chair, Mr. Kent Russell. Kent. Kent, can you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you very much. Mr. President, I move to make the following nominations in accordance with the nominating slate made available online for members. I nominate myself, Kent Russell, Michael Mcdonough, Elizabeth Miska, and Diane Robbins for a second 3-year term as trustees. I nominate Maura Ardis, Catherine Collinvaux, Dania Flores Hegarty, and Barbara Morse for a first 3-year term as trustees. I nominate James Karadimos, Matthew Matos, Lisa Mcdonough, and Shirley Williams for a 1 term in order to continue serving as an officer. I nominate the following individuals as officers of the Society: President Lisa Mcdonough, Treasurer Michael Mcdonough, Secretary Matthew Mattis, Vice Presidents James Karadimos, Dix Leeson, Michael Pagano, Kent Russell, and Shirley Williams. I nominate the following individuals to new trustees on the Governance Committee: Catherine Collinvaux for 3 years and John Lee for 3 years.
Thank you, Kent. May I have a second, please?
I second.
I'm going to call for the vote, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary. I will read from the vote. Of the submitted proxy votes, there were 66 in favor, 0 opposed, 19 abstentions. So the motion carries and the vote passes. Congratulations, Lisa, and to the entire board. Kent.
This is a proposed bylaw amendment. The following is a proposed amendment endorsed by the Governance Committee. To specify the quorum size of all committees, a 3rd bullet point will be added to Article 8, Committees, under Section 1, all committees to read. Each committee shall have a quorum equal to a simple majority of their membership unless otherwise stated in the bylaws. The Governance Committee voted unanimously to add the proposed amendment at their May 14th, 2021 meeting, and the Board of Trustees voted unanimously to add the proposed amendment at their May 27th, 2021 meeting. The motion is: the members of the Worcester County Horticultural Society move to add a 3rd bullet point under Article 8, Section 1 of the bylaws to read as follows: each committee shall have a quorum equal to a simple majority of their membership unless otherwise stated in these bylaws.
May I have a second?
I second the motion.
Mr. Secretary, call the vote.
The submitted proxy votes, there were 61 in favor, 0 opposed, 24 abstentions. The motion carries.
Thank you. The vote passes. Thank you so much. It has truly been an honor working with the entire board. Those concluding their board service today are Pat Gray, Rick Leaf, and Frank Reese. I really have enjoyed the privilege of serving with this distinct group of individuals who have really dedicated themselves to Tower Hill. On behalf of the board and the entire Tower Hill family, I would like to thank you for your dedication and effort in growing Tower Hill. What a difference 5 years have made, really because of you. So these distinguished volunteer leaders, beyond serving on the board with all the countless endeavors, committees, tasks, and objectives that duty entails, conducted themselves to the utmost professionalism. The manner in which they offer their guidance and knowledge and generously shared their assets is especially noteworthy. From a personal point of view, your warm friendship and support has been important to me. Your passion for Tower Hill and your dedication is a legacy of which you can be proud. Please join me in extending our gratitude, respect, and praise. Thank you to all. Grace.
And today is my bittersweet honor to also give a salute to Jim Karadimos, outgoing president of the board. On one hand, today we've been able to share stories of resilience, success, and growth. But on the other hand, we have to say goodbye to a leader that played a huge part in that success story. Only goodbye as president. He's still staying for vice president, thank goodness, for one more year. Jim has been a steadfast leader, mentor, and a friend to me since I started at the garden 4 years ago. When I went through the interview process, of course, I was inspired by the recently completed master plan and the innovative designs for a children and family garden. But most of all, it was because of Jim. He was such a strong leader at the helm of this wonderful organization, and I knew that wherever Jim would lead, I would follow. As a boss, Jim combines compassion, vision, and strength, which are very important to me in a leader that I'd like to follow. At every board meeting, he starts with the heartfelt president's report. You heard something very similar at the beginning of this meeting. He has brought tears to my eyes at more than one occasion. Today was no exception. And that's because he has a passion for our mission and is always that passion for the mission is always at the forefront of how he speaks about the garden and how he makes decisions about the garden as well. You know that what he's deciding and what he's doing is really from the heart. He truly inspires others to care about Tower Hill as much as he does, and I will miss him greatly as our board president. But like I said, luckily, we get him for one more year as a vice president. So if you go to the next slide, we thought a fitting gift to celebrate Jim's presidency would be something living that would always connect him from the garden to the garden for years to come. So, of course, we did a little sleuthing, and I contacted Jim's husband, Bill, and said, what do you think Jim would like? We'd like to get him a plant. And even though it was an email, and I won't try to do an English accent, but I read it in an English accent because Bill has such a charming accent. He said, how about a very fine fir? So I thought that was such a great idea. And I asked our director of horticulture, Mark Richardson, to choose a very fine fir fitting of a tribute to Jim. So what we chose is Abies Koreana, Horstman's Silberlock. I told Mark that he would laugh when I butchered the cultivar name of this very fine fir, but it's a type of Korean fir. And one description of this is it's an elegant pyramidal Korean fir that has recurved green needles showing off gleaming silver white undersides to create a striking two-tone effect. Upright purple cones stand out against the silvery outstanding foliage. We actually have one in the winter garden here at Tower Hill. So we wanted to have to pick a cultivar of a plant that we had at the garden so Jim could have that deeper connection to our garden in his garden. And I thought with a description like that, that certainly is a very fine fir and one fitting of a tribute to Jim. So our horticulture staff will be planting this for you, Jim, at your house. So you can direct them. We know that you have a type of Korean fir on the Cape already. So we hope that you'll welcome this to your Northborough garden. We hope you enjoy this very fine fir as much as we've enjoyed your very fine leadership.
Thank you so much.
Now I would like to invite Suzanne Hauerstein, who's our coordinator of volunteer and internships. She's going to give out our volunteer award.
Thank you so much, Grace. I'm Suzanne Hauerstein, the coordinator of volunteer and intern services at Tower Hill. I'm so pleased and honored to present Leslie Duthie with the second annual Volunteer of the Year Award at Tower Hill. Leslie will receive a certificate of appreciation and a private lunch with Grace Elton, our Tower Hill CEO. Leslie started volunteering at Tower Hill in 2018 when she was working on her retirement from a nearly 40-year career as a horticulturist. She told me when I first met her here that she had known that she wanted to be a volunteer at Tower Hill for a while, but she first needed to fully retire from her job. Leslie has not slowed down since her retirement. She has volunteered in almost all of Tower Hill's outdoor garden areas, including the newly planted apple orchard, where she can be seen on many mornings watering and taking care of the trees. In addition to working in the gardens, you can find Leslie tirelessly working on plant and exhibition labels and signs. Not only does she create the labels and signs, she researches the plant's provenance and verifies cultivar names, which require her to painstakingly track down the correct botanical nomenclature. She will spend several hours doing this work before ever engraving a new plant label. She has single-handedly engraved almost all the new acrylic plant labels found throughout the gardens and has worked closely with Matt Tatro and Mark Richardson to redo all the labels in the conservatories. It's immediately clear to all those who cross her path that she is committed to the Tower Hill mission and is dedicated to the staff members with whom she works with. She has made herself an invaluable member of the Tower Hill community and a great friend to many throughout the organization. Leslie told me she doesn't volunteer here for the volunteer rewards or benefits, other than to receive the Tower Hill Botanic Garden volunteer canvas bag. Those of us who get to work with her are the ones who receive the benefits of her friendly demeanor, excellent work ethic, and exhaustive knowledge of native flowers. Leslie, I am so happy to present you with this award. We truly appreciate everything you do for us here at Tower Hill. Thank you from all of us to you.
Well, I'd like to thank you all very much. And I want you to know that it's really Tower Hill that has given me a new home. I worked at the same garden for over 35 years, and I retired and was not allowed to return, partly due to COVID and partly due to changes in the board of directors. And I was missing my garden very much. But one of the things that you all have talked about has been resiliency, the healing of nature, and your wonderful staff. And it's certainly your horticultural staff that welcomed me to the garden and made me feel very much at home and gave me a garden that I can really feel is partly mine. You've given me a new garden home. I truly enjoy coming to Tower Hill. I changed my schedule to work out so that I'm at the garden at the right times. I've thoroughly enjoyed every job that I've taken on. And I want you to know that as a volunteer, I know that it is my job to do what the staff needs. And it's been my pleasure. So thank you so much for this wonderful award. I promise to give you all of the time that I can in the coming years. So thank you so much.
Congratulations, Leslie. We are so lucky to have you. I'll now turn it over to Mark Richardson, who will give out our Community Greening Awards.
Thanks, Grace. Next slide, please. And congratulations, Leslie. Very well deserved. So pleased to have you as a volunteer. So we have 2 awards to present this year as part of our Community Greening Awards. First is under the category of Other Community Greening Project. Just doesn't quite fit into one of our nice categories. So Other Community Greening Project is this project at an old Methodist church in the town of Berlin. And so just a little bit from the nomination before I turn it over to Evelyn Dewick, the executive director, who I think is going to say a few words. The nomination form came in and it said, the desolate old Methodist church sat crumbling next to Berlin's historic town green for decades until a group of neighbors got together to fix it up and make the building a welcoming community gathering space and a beautiful space that's open to the public. We were just thrilled with this nomination, thrilled to see this project. It sort of embodies the spirit of what we like to see in these community greening awards. And it was just such a fantastic project. We're thrilled to offer it. So I know that Ms. Dewick is on the call, and I'd be really happy to turn it over. And congratulations on this award, very well deserved. Thank you for all of your efforts to beautify this this really important public space. If you can go to the next slide. Evelyn, would you like to say a few words? There you go.
All right, sure. Thank you. We're honored, completely honored to be receive this award. I just wanted to say briefly that we are a community gathering place, and much like Tower Hill, we invite people to use our very small space. It's a half an acre, but we use volunteers to do all the outdoor work. And I have with me Paul McKelk, whom I'd just like to highlight because he is the leader of our efforts to beautify that gorgeous space that we created. One of our taglines is creating connections, creating conditions for connecting. And I think that he represents what he's done has created the condition for connecting outside, which, as you've already pointed out so many times in this meeting, it needs to be outside because of COVID. So timing is everything. So thank you very much for the award. And I'd like Paul to just say a couple of words.
Let me start with, I'm a Boylston native, but I transplanted to Berlin many, many years ago. So even though I left Boylston before Tower Hill, I think I brought some of it with me. I've just been very grateful for this opportunity here, starting with a blank canvas, if you will, and working with Debbie and talking about potential usage. We've come up with something that really works well, and thank you very much.
And thank you both so much. Thanks for joining this meeting this afternoon, and congratulations on this very, very well-deserved award.
Thank you.
Go to the next slide. Our second and final award this afternoon is Best Traffic Island. And this was a nomination that came through for actually a site that I was pretty familiar with. I used to work in Framingham and got to drive through here on my way to 495 pretty much every day on my way to and from work. And so I got to admire this traffic island for many, many years. This was another example of a community driven effort. And there was a group put together to beautify this strip along West Main Street at the 495 interchange. And it's just another great example of a community-driven project that was supported by some local businesses, including the Hopkinton Chamber of Commerce, and it just a great project, great example of good work being done out there in the community, and very pleased to award the Best Traffic Island this year to the Gateway Green Project in Hopkinton. And I know that we have a couple of gentlemen from the project team with us, both Peter Mezit and Finn Perry, and I'd like to turn it over to them now to say a few words. So congratulations to you both.
Thank you. This is Peter. And Finn, you should definitely say some words too, but no, we really were surprised to receive this award. I'm not sure who nominated us, but we feel really good about it. We think it did a lot for the community. 5 years ago when we built it, it was all private money that went into it. There's no taxpayer money. The town select board and town manager really got behind it, and it costs about $160,000 in privately raised money to build it and to maintain it for the first 5 years. And we've just been through another round of fundraising, and it's supported through signage, and sponsors get a sign on this 1,500-foot strip. But it really sends a nice message to people who come off the highway and enter our community that you're entering a town that the business community, sponsored by the chamber, all these companies belong to the Hopkinton Chamber of Commerce, really embraces the look and feel of the town. It sets the right tone for a healthy, safe, environmentally conscious community that we are, and we look to keep it healthy. And we've just raised another fund, including most of the sponsors becoming repeat sponsors to maintain the median strip planting and its high quality look for another 5 years. So Finn can mention some of the other people I think who helped out in the beginning. Go ahead, Finn.
Well, Peter, you're the star. You designed the work. We also got tremendous assistance and initiation from Select Solar, who years ago was the person that came along and said, this just looks like hell. Why don't we see if we could do something better? That got Peter designing, along with Scott Richardson of Gorman Richardson Lewis Architects in town. And then the chamber just picked it up and ran with it. As Peter said, we raised a tremendous amount of money, which was a total shock. I just want to mention Jeff Barnes, who's our Conservation Commission chair. He got on the phone and got a tremendous number of small-ish donations to go along with the larger ones. And so it was just one of these wonderful public-private partnerships that, and I have liked to say, I've been involved in so many things in Hopkinton that nobody has liked, and this one they love. So it was very personally rewarding to be involved with, and just very much enjoyed working with Peter to get it done. So thank you. Who would have thought that Worcester County would have come to Hopkinton and had a look around? We really appreciate your vision.
Great. Well, thank you both for all of your efforts, and thank you for joining us this afternoon, and congratulations on a job well done. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. Congratulations, Evelyn, Peter, and Finn. Really impressed by your projects. I can't wait to see them in person. So I'd now like to introduce the new president of the Worcester County Horticultural Society, Lisa Mcdonough. She'll adjourn the business meeting and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Grace. Actually, I want to take a minute because I want to say also thank you to Jim, who really is a very fine fellow. And those are large shoes, both literally and figuratively, that I have to fill. But I hope to follow Jim's lead, to lead boldly as Tower Hill moves into insurgents. So thank Jim you've been great to work with. But now I'd like to take my first duty. It's my honor to adjourn the 180th annual meeting of the Worcester County Horticultural Society. And now I will move on, and I am honored that I am able to now introduce our speaker, Erin Parker. John F. Kennedy once said, "One person can make a difference and everyone should try." Erin Parker is a prime example of this quote. Erin Parker is currently completing her junior year at Tantascwa Regional Junior High School in Fixdale, Mass. In addition to her studies, Erin participates in 3 varsity sports, the student government, and various other academic clubs. Erin spends her free time working at a local farm and volunteering for the Community Food Collaborative Garden, which provides fresh produce to Southbridge families. Recently, Erin discovered the need for additional fresh produce in Tantascwa community, and this inspired her to create the One Plant Project. She plans to attend a 4-year college focusing on the areas of political science and environmental studies. And now it's over to you, Erin.
Thank you, Lisa. Next slide, please. So, hi everyone, my name is Erin Parker, and I'm a junior at Tantascwa High School. I'm the director and the founder of the One Plant Project. And for those of you who may not know where Tantascwa High School is, if you've ever been to Old Sturbridge Village, it's about 5 miles down the road. So I'm gonna start off with what inspired me to actually create this project. So it all began in my economics honors class, and we were challenged with the idea, here's your final project, create a civics project and address a problem within your community. And as many of you know, food insecurity is a problem that can't just be solved by one person. It really takes so many efforts. So I decided I was going to focus specifically in my community because many people don't know, but it affects so many people that you just wouldn't realize. So through a lot of research, and I also had done some volunteering previously at food banks and food pantries, as well as a community garden in the area, that fresh produce was a big issue for communities. They didn't receive a lot of donations. They relied mostly on canned or boxed goods. And as many of you know, those just don't provide the same nutritional value that a fresh vegetable or fresh fruit may. So all this started out with the idea that fresh produce can be given to food pantries through my volunteer work at the Community Food Collaborative. It's a community garden. It's based behind the Sturbridge Town Hall, and they grow 3,000 pounds of produce a year. They donate it all to one food pantry in Southbridge. They're really incredible people, but I noticed that it takes about 12 people, like 90 hours a week. They spend so much time in that garden to maintain it, to make sure that they can produce such a large output. So, next slide, please. Sorry. So in order to try to reduce the scale to increase the numbers, I decided to create the One Plant Project. So our goal is to provide fresh produce to the other food banks and food pantries in the Tantasco area. So the Tantasco area encompasses 5 towns: Sturbridge, Brimfield, Holland, Wales, and Brookfield. And there are 3 food pantries that mainly serve those communities, along with some supplements from the schools, but those are the main food pantries. And in order to do this, we have a 2-pronged initiative campaign. So the first one is the One Plant campaign, and its goal is to provide as many people in the area with one plant or some seeds. They then grow those seeds and then donate that produce back to us at the One Plant Project. So this year, there were 5 different options that people could receive, either growing in the ground or growing in the pot. So for growing it in the ground, as many of you know, it generally takes a little bit more space. So those options were cucumbers, yellow squash, and zucchinis. Those were generally given to people who are more experienced gardeners. They may have had a more established garden before. So that way we knew they had the space and the time to take care of those plants. And for growing things in a pot, we gave those to more novice gardeners or people who just didn't have the space for it. We didn't want to limit this project to just people who had a garden already existing, and growing it in a pot is a very manageable thing to do for a lot of people. So those were tomato plants and pepper plants. And we saw a lot of people who may not have had experience gardening before sign up for this project purely because they thought they could try. So the goal was to get not only fresh produce, but to have a large amount of people participate by doing something really small to make such a big impact in the community. And the second part of our initiative is our Calling All Gardeners initiative. And I assume that many of you guys on the call are already gardeners, so you know that there's always 1 week during the summer where you have 40 cucumbers and 20 zucchinis and you have no idea what to do with them. You give them to your neighbors, your grandparents, your parents. But there's still always stuff left over. So our goal is to take in any excess produce that you may have, and we're going to also distribute that to food pantries. So that way, not only do we eliminate waste, but we give it to someone who really, really needs it. So that way our gardeners can get involved, so they didn't have to take on any additional plants. Many of them chose to, but they did not have to. And people who may not have been as experienced. And that way we can also create a link between them to really start developing a community of gardeners as well. So the biggest challenge really was figuring out a place that was a central location for everyone. And for me, it really made sense to start it at the high school. It's the central location. We're a regional school district, so everyone travels there anyways with their kids to go to school. And we decided we're going to do 2 drop-off days, Tuesdays and Saturdays, starting June 29th through the entire summer. And this really worked with our food pantry schedules of when they were open or when they had pickup times, especially because of COVID. People were generally doing a drive-by, pick up a bag, take a bag. But now since restrictions have eased, people can start to go inside of these places. So when I contacted a lot of these food pantries, they stated that their main struggle was actually refrigeration for them. They had some small fridges or some freezers, but they didn't really have a lot of space to contain a large amount of vegetables that would be required to feed their constituents. So by working with their schedules, we're able to provide them produce, and these drop-off days really work in a way that they only have to store the produce for maybe a morning or a morning and an afternoon. So that way the food doesn't spoil, but they're still able to get as much produce as possible. This year we've had, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Sorry about that. So this year we had our annual distribution day on May 22nd, We had over 200 people sign up for this project, which was great. And about 165 people came. The turnout was really incredible, especially on such a hot day. And the community support has really been great. We really appreciate our support from the administration, from the local community, and especially from Tantasco students who have agreed to volunteer throughout the entire summer. Next slide, please. So as we look to the future, we have a few goals that we've set out for ourselves. So the first is obviously collecting a few thousand pounds of produce over the course of the summer. So in addition to the 3 food pantries that we've already contacted, in case we get an overabundance for some weeks, we've also contacted 2 additional food banks. So that way we make sure that no food goes to waste. And we've also agreed to have a partnership with Tower Hill next year to grow some seedlings for us, which is great. It's wonderful. We've had some people donate a large amount of seedlings to us this year, but it also required me to turn my sunroom into a makeshift greenhouse. So that's just not feasible in my parents' eyes again. But having a space at Tower Hill where we could get all those seedlings in a central location, especially with such great conditions for them to thrive and grow, it's really incredible. And in addition to that, you guys have started a great food, like a great vegetable garden, and any extra starters may or may not be donated to us, which is wonderful too. In addition to that, we've also started a kit for any other communities who may be interested in implementing the program in their area. It just requires a few tweaks to our website. We have some forms that people have to fill out. So it would just be indicate which town you're from. That would be all. And then all of that kit would go right to your community if you were interested. So if anyone is interested in starting a 1-plant project in your community, feel free to reach out to us through our website. We have our email on there. We also have social media too. And thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Aaron, so much for an amazing idea, amazing project. I think I might change John F. Kennedy's quote to "one person can make a difference and one seed can really make a difference." Your plants, it's just an amazing idea, and a partnership with Tower Hill is great. So I want to thank everyone for attending today, and hope to see everyone up at Tower Hill very soon.